to the right on these little consoles. When you are done speaking, you may exit the room or you may stay. If you exit or stand up, we could possibly let someone else in to speak. The people who speak will need to do so at the table. So if you want to make room for other people to speak, you'll have to leave your chair and let them sit down. No signs, I mentioned that, and we'll start right at noon, which is a few seconds from now. Okay, it's noon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Thompson. I'm State Representative for District 58. I'm Chair of the subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee for the General Assembly of the State of Iowa. We're here on 2082. Are we okay with the? Okay, thank you. So with me are Representatives Wills and Representative Sheets. We will have a introductory 8 minutes total from the sponsor of the bill, Representative Shipley, and a witness. Then we will have comments from a representative for the ACLU, then from the family leader, then Ms. Paschke would like to speak, and then we will go with a limit of 2 minutes, pro and con. If we run out of pro or con, we will just take speakers in the appropriate order. Again, be sure to identify yourself, say who you're representing, if anyone, and turn the microphone on, or else we'll be in trouble. So thank you. Mr. Shipley, Representative Shipley, please go ahead.
Thank you, Representative Thompson, to the Judiciary Committee, members of the public for the hearing of this bill. My name is Jeff Shipley, State Representative District 87. House File 2082 was offered to examine Iowa's civil rights framework and ensure it's working as intended. The people of District 87 believe that the social theory of gender identity more closely resembles a physical and mental impairment, i.e. disability, rather than an immutable or inherent characteristic distinguished as its own protected class. I won't focus on the legal implications of this designation, since civil rights law is exceedingly complex and case specific. It's unlikely we'll reach consensus on what this bill actually does. But overall, the people of District 87 wish to illustrate 3 points for the urgent examination of the Judiciary Committee. Number one, the inclusion of gender identity in Chapter 216 is not well defined. Number two, there exists many unanswered legal questions and unsettled matters of law. This ambiguity is causing problems, and injustice is occurring under the status quo of Chapter 216. This injustice is likely to persist if left unchanged. And finally, there exists a harsh and aggressive retaliatory environment surrounding the discussion of gender identity, which completely nullifies the spirit of Iowa's Civil Rights Code. So point one, the most pressing question lawmakers need to clarify: how does someone establish themselves as a member of this protected class? The current definition of gender identity given is a circular definition, meaning it defines absolutely nothing about what the word actually means. When you examine protected classes like race, sex, national origin, there often exists objective, irrefutable criteria that is readily available at a glance. In cases of religion, where it can be much more subjective over the course of a person's life, there are methods a respondent can use to disqualify a complainant from that protected class. Under gender identity, there is no criteria to evaluate, and attempting to disprove someone's gender identity would likely be considered discriminatory per se. These protections, as written in Iowa Code 216, can literally apply to everyone. And as identity disorders continue to metastasize, we see more and more bizarre identities being protected under this umbrella. So Exhibit A, which has been given to the Judiciary Committee, a man in the UK that is reported to identify as a 6-year-old girl. And Exhibit B is a man in Canada that identifies as a 13-year-old girl. Exhibit C is a child from the Washington University Transgender Center who said they were a communist attack helicopter, human female, maybe non-binary. This child qualified for transgender medical treatment, which implies they would also qualify for gender identity civil rights protections as well. Exhibit D is an Iowa example, a sworn statement from a resident of Jefferson County who was introduced to a child that identifies as Moon, with pronouns anything but she, her. Children expressing themselves freely and playing make-believe is great. That is until the child believes their make-believe identities are entitled to robust legal protections under Chapter 216, and anyone who says otherwise is a hateful bigot. So in light of this, the judiciary urgently needs to decide who does and doesn't qualify for these legal protections. Instead of addressing controversies one by one as they come up, Iowans would be best served to examine the underlying framework that's giving rise to these problems. Number two, these unanswered legal questions are causing real-life problems for Iowans, and injustice is occurring. So part of this discussion is very confusing because the rights transgender activists are claiming to protect are much different than how this is playing out in real life. And much of the public that is engaging in this issue really don't have much of a clue. For example, one right the transgender activists are adamant about protecting is the right for transgender teenage females to expose their breasts in public and for grown men to expose their scrotums. Exhibit E details the Pella pool incidents, which caused major disruptions in the city of Pella, and these accommodations even resulted in the pool having to close down for a time and loss of employment for almost a dozen employees. These indecent exposures and/or expressions of gender identity have been occurring across Iowa. I can understand why creepy old men are so adamant to protect these rights to expose their scrotums and of trans teenagers to expose their breasts, but I don't understand how that supersedes the rights of others to enjoy public amenities or how this is really in any child's best interest. Exhibit F is an Iowa mother's report detailing the extensive physical and emotional harm and continued discrimination endured by her daughter as a result of being forced to share a bathroom with a trans kid who repeatedly violated her privacy. While some of this particular issue has been resolved moving forward with the passage of Senate File 482 last year, nothing has been done to remediate these damages. Interestingly, this report was submitted anonymously out of fear and likely prospect of retaliation, which brings me to my third and final point. There exists an unnecessary and viciously hostile environment which prevents complaints from coming forth, nullifying the spirit of the entire code. There are simply too many examples of this to count, but I have two instances to illustrate. Exhibit G is a letter from Todd Erzin, who shares what happened to his daughters and his family after they spoke up surrounding their concerns on women's athletics being negatively impacted by gender identity. There's no other way to describe it. His account demonstrates rampant hostile retaliation, bullying, and targeted harassment meant to silence and demean them, solely as a result of their willingness to defend their personal rights in the public sphere. The retaliation and harassment was so pervasive that even after multiple students were suspended, the school was unable to enforce discipline to prevent this bullying. This bullying included the concoction of deliberate lies and gossip. I hope everyone knows retaliatory conduct against someone pursuing their civil rights is highly illegal. To my knowledge, none of the activist groups have acknowledged this retaliation or sought to denounce or condemn it, which a good faith actor in the civil rights sphere would be expected to do. Given the nature of this conduct, it's possible this bullying could have even in part been fomented or at least tacitly condoned by groups like Iowa Safe Schools. Exhibit H further underscores this phenomenon. A young trans person named Chloe Cole visited Iowa City, shared her lived experience, genuine concerns relevant to this topic, and the retaliatory conduct and personal attacks against not just her, but those who hosted her was immense and led to the arrest of 6 individuals who were unable to express their opinions lawfully. If members or allies of this protected class are unable to adhere to state law in other areas, I seriously question if this pattern of conduct is conducive to the generous and extra legal protections that are afforded under Iowa Code 216. So thank you for the members of the Judiciary Committee for examining these 3 points. These are crucial matters of law, and I'd like to bring up Jefferson County resident Cynthia Yaki to speak on her experiences on these issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My name is Cynthia Yockey. I am a conservative lesbian, certified ghostwriter, and the disability rights activist who started the emotional support animal movement in 1996. I can provide citations for every point I'm going to make. Gender identity must be removed from Iowa's list of protected classes because it has no physical reality and destroys rights based on the physical realities of the protected classes of sex and sexual orientation. Protecting gender identity allows straight men the right to masturbate in women's restrooms and smear semen on the toilet tissue in every stall. It puts straight males in the same bed as your daughter on school field trips and gives straight males the right to parade around nude in the women's locker room and wave their erections in your little girl's face while calling anyone who objects a bigot. The darkest secrets of the transgender movement are the real reasons why people become transgender and why they target children for conversion. The short explanation is that the majority of the transgender movement is straight men who have a self-interest.
Sorry, your time has expired. We had an agreement with all members of the committee on the time that would be permitted. We'll have to move on to
This is 2 minutes.
we'll have to move on to Mr. McRoberts.
You can do it at the end. You can follow up at the end.
Howdy, representatives. Thank you for your time. My name is Pete McRoberts. I represent the American Civil Liberties Union of Iowa. We oppose House File 2082 for the simple reason that we support the Iowa Civil Rights Act as written. We were glad to see Iowa incorporate gender identity protection and sexual orientation protection into ICRA in 2007, and we believe that every word of it should stay put. Here's why. Contrary to federal law, gender-based protections in the state of Iowa have to be spelled out. So you might have seen Justice Gorsuch's opinion in the case called Bostic, where federal gender identity protections are protected on account of the sex discrimination clause in Title VII. That's not the case in Iowa. In the first case, one called Somers, in 1983, the Supreme Court took a different approach, meaning if the legislature wants it, they've got to say it explicitly. 20 years later, back in Fro, the Supreme Court very recently said the same thing. Now, why I'm saying this is because this means that our sex discrimination statute is very limited in the state. There's no off-ramp. The sex discrimination statute does not cover things like gender stereotypes or any other protections that the feds might. So while we're very glad that the gender identity clause of ICRA protects transgender Iowans, representatives should be aware that it also protects employees from things like paying for gender stereotypes. This prevents an employee from being dismissed because he's got a high voice or because she might be taller than an employer prefers. This is why ICRA needs to stay as is. Second piece, we must also note that the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in on this very question in a case called Romer versus Evans. Now, here's the issue. That says that when the legislature or the Congress would pass a law deliberately, I don't want to say targeting, but referencing a specific group of people without others, that's a per se equal protection violation. Now, I'm not saying you're targeting people because I don't have to. Romer versus Evans also says that when a legislature grants a right that they are not constitutionally required to grant, when they remove it later, that itself is an equal protection violation. So the legislature in 07 was under no obligation to pass gender identity and sexual orientation provisions into ICRA. But removing them right now puts you on the hook for a very clear equal protection violation under Romer. Third point, I want to reference the gender dysphoria provision regarding disability. So here recently in the Fourth Circuit of the United States Court of Appeals, and then subsequently the Supreme Court denied cert. This is a case, was Kincaid. Well, that court concluded that the Americans with Disabilities Act does in fact consider gender dysphoria, so a medical designation that causes distress for people, so distinct from somebody who's transgender. But the condition of dysphoria in the Fourth Circuit is considered a protected disability under the ADA. So that provision is why we're not particularly, we don't think that the dysphoria provision of this bill mitigates the harm with the bill. That just simply mirrors what the Fourth Circuit has already done and the Supreme Court didn't act on. So for these reasons, we respectfully ask you to deny advancing this bill. We believe that the Iowa Civil Rights Act does as it's intended. And for that reason, we ask you to preserve every word of it and deny to advance this bill. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there a representative from the family leader? Seeing none, we'll move on to Ms. Paschke.
Thank you, members of the committee. Kelly Paschke on behalf of the Iowa Association for Justice. We are registered against this bill. I have here with me today two attorneys that practice exclusively in civil rights cases. And with me at the table today is Madison Fiddler Carlson, and I will let her explain to you the impacts of this devastating legislation. Thank you.
Hello. As Kelly said, I'm an attorney in Des Moines representing employees who are discriminated against, retaliated against, or harassed due to protected classes under ICRA. The gender identity provision is one that I've only had come up once in 8 years of practice. There simply are not, it is not an issue that we see running rampant that affects that many people. However, the people it does affect, it's very important that we keep protecting them. The case that I had most recently with a trans individual was a situation where the individual was trans. They presented and lived their life as a male. It was not this person in this situation who was making their gender identity a problem at work. It was the coworkers. It was situations where people were asking him about whether he was a real man or a real woman. And I think most vitally was asking him and asking others what his genitals were. That kind of behavior is inappropriate in any workplace, regardless of gender or gender identity. It is something, however, like the gentleman from the ACLU pointed out, that if we remove gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Act, courts would interpret that to mean that it is not going to be covered under sex discrimination or sex harassment. It would be understood that it no longer protects anybody who is trans. We would still be able to file lawsuits in federal court, but then the standards would be different, making it essentially a quagmire in our court system. And I think the last point I'd like.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Is there a speaker in favor of the bill? Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes. Identify yourself, please, and push the microphone button down. It's the one on the right. Thank you.
My name's Terry Pierce. I'm from West Des Moines, and I'm in favor of this bill. I don't think I could say my thoughts on this bill any more eloquently than Representative Shipley did. I think it's kind of ironic that they are chanting that they're human right. They're questioning human rights. I think we all have human rights. And I don't think this bill is taking away those rights. So I'm definitely in favor of this bill. And because like Representative Shipley said, how can you identify what that class is? There's no way to identify that. It's whatever their thoughts are. And we don't govern thoughts. We shouldn't be governing thoughts. And that is what they're doing. They don't have, if you understand what I mean, I don't know how else to express it, but we should not be governing thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll now take a pro speaker. Let's begin at this side.
Thank you, Representatives. My name is Charlie Wishman. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of the Iowa Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. Thank you for holding this hearing today. We are opposed to this legislation. As a citizen, I'm opposed to it because I believe that it is morally repugnant. But beyond that, as the president of the Federation, we have some employment concerns about this. We have a very big concern with taking rights from anyone at all based on genetic or gender characteristics and turning that into a disability, which it is not. Somebody facing discrimination shouldn't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to be declared disabled just to get justice in the workplace. This would make it so that even if they went through that process, they would have to, the employer is going to have to make an accommodation, what is called a reasonable accommodation. So tell me, what is it a reasonable accommodation for somebody that you just don't like to look at or that you just don't like? Tell me what a reasonable accommodation for that employer is. They will put them in the back room. They will hide them away. Count paper clips. You don't count the right amount of paper clips. Oh, you're gone. Just cause. That's what this is about. This also doesn't protect anyone from hiring discrimination or gender based on gender or sexual identity. This legislature shouldn't talk about creating jobs. I guarantee you people will lose their jobs over this. This is wrong. Thank you for your time. All power to the working class.
Thank you for your comments. I misspoke earlier. That was a person opposed to the bill. Is there a person in favor of the bill who would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the next. Oh, well, I believe that person's already spoken. Okay, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Geraldine Jones. I am from Lynn County. I'm a mother of two. I am registered in favor of the bill, though I have reason to be in opposition. I'm ultimately in favor. I'm going to ask for my time to be back once the door is closed. Thank you. I'm ultimately in favor because we are seeing school policies passed that are drafted from suggestions taken from organizations and their loose interpretations of both state and federal law. School boards are then editing law and
We'll grant the speaker an extra 10 seconds in order to make up for the interruption from outside. Please proceed.
Thank you. School boards are then editing law or suggesting language to what they want it to say rather than it matching the legal intent of the law or not. This is about the safety of all students, and this bill will tighten up the language and expectations for the safety and protection of all students. When Linn-Mar passed the policy 504.13, there was over 3 hours of public comment from concerned parents. The school board was more afraid of being sued by a transgender student than securing the rights and protections of all students. They chose to protect one student over another. During that meeting, the legal counsel had stated that the Civil Rights Commission has authority to seek remedial action against local complaints should the complaint fall within the set of parameters. They also expanded on what it would look like for the disabilities as well if students. And I think having it fall under disabilities, it would give the schools a clear identification of what that language should look like. Passing this bill would protect all students from discrimination. It would allow the schools to have the necessary provisions to adopt policy that ultimately protects every single student. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Representative Russell Chriselle. Okay,
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Kruger. I'm from Poweshiek County, and I am here to testify against the passage of this bill. I disagree with the notion that this bill would not be a green light to hate and discriminate at will, or that the states that do not
could
have
you
gender
speak a
identity.
little more directly into the microphone. Thank you.
Or that the states that don't have gender identity civil rights protections do not allow discrimination against trans people. They do. My lived experience is evidence of this. Until 2020, I lived in a state where gender identity was not a protected class, and I regularly faced discrimination because of my gender identity. And I was told that I was hated and that people could get away with it because gender identity was not a protected class. A few years ago, on Valentine's Day, we picked up our toddler from daycare. She was excited for learning about the activities and at school, and it was her first Valentine's Day where she could express what she wanted. She wanted cookies and milk with her family. So I went to the store to go get some. I tried to pay with a debit card and was asked to show my ID. I showed my ID and the cashier said it wasn't me and that I couldn't buy the cookies. I tried to pay in cash and was told that we don't serve you people here, and I had to go. I was shocked, demoralized, humiliated, and wondered how I was going to come home, explain to my little one why people hated me so much that our family couldn't have Oreos and milk on Valentine's Day. I approached multiple lawyers and statewide rights organizations, my local human rights office, about filing a lawsuit or discrimination complaint, and was repeatedly told at every turn that because gender identity wasn't in the Civil Rights Code, there was no case, and I could no longer shop at that grocery store anymore. I had doctors refuse to treat me for strep throat, saying that he didn't treat transgender patients. I was denied service in restaurants and clothing stores. And I know people that were denied service at food kitchens, pet boarders, movie theaters, and snow removal, all because of who they are.
I'm sorry, your time is concluded. The person in the tie at the end of the table, you're next. Oh, is there anyone? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I didn't realize we had another person here. Please proceed.
My name is Gary Leffler. I'm from West Des Moines, Iowa. I speak in support of this. I think it's very clear that everyone in this room is not the result of a petri dish. I think everyone in this room is the result of a sperm and an egg and creating life. There are two genders.
If you speak into the
and
microphone,
two
please.
genders. If there's some variation of that and you feel compelled to be a result of that, that's your decision. My rights start where your rights, our rights are equal in this sense. Your rights stop where my rights start, and my rights finish where your rights start. And it's this lack of respect that we have for each other and respecting each other's personal rights is part of the problem. Recently here in the state of Iowa, the legislators had to pass a law saying that, guess what? Men can't participate in women's sports. And that's the way it should be. God ordained two sexes, two genders. And I highly suggest we keep it that way because that is proven to be the most effective unit in history is the family unit. And that's what we must protect. I rise and stand in support of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry I missed you there. Please, someone in opposition to the bill, I believe the gentleman in the tie is next.
Thank you to the members of the subcommittee. Damian Thompson, representing Iowa Safe Schools. We're opposed to the bill. All Iowans should be treated fairly and equally by the laws of the state. Nobody should have to live in fear of being legally discriminated against for simply being who they are. The Iowa Civil Rights Act has ensured for years that all people, including those who are transgender, have a fair opportunity to earn a living, meet obligations, provide for themselves and their families, and to ultimately build a better life. To deny someone an apartment, deny service in a restaurant, deny them a loan, or otherwise discriminate against people simply because they're transgender is not what we're about as Iowans. Iowa would be the first and only state to strip an entire class of citizens of their civil rights in this way. In terms of the students we serve, both anecdotally and in the data we collect, the trans population is overall in the state, the trans population is 0.29% of our state population. So we are going to be punching down on ultimately a very small minority who need these rights in code. Nearly 1 in 3 young people said their mental health was consistently poor due to the legislation similar like we're discussing today, or that we've brought up in past sessions. We see this every single day in our work. Get to the facts. We have more jobs than we do people here in the state of Iowa. Our organization serves 10,000 LGBTQ students across all 99 counties every year, and the overwhelming majority of them indicate they don't feel safe and they don't feel compelled to want to stay here and raise a family. This is an existential workforce issue, especially when we have a survey literally this week coming out and indicating that 1 in 4 Gen Z, the upcoming generation, identifies LGBTQ. That's a massive workforce problem if we're not making our state inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Is there someone in favor of the bill who would like to speak? Please turn on the microphone like I just didn't do and state your name and who you are representing, if anyone.
My name is Autumn Stamolis, and I am here to testify for this bill, or I'm sorry, against this bill. I am a 34-year-old transgender woman who is a lifelong Iowa resident. Ever since I can remember, I knew in my heart and soul that I was a girl. At 23 years old, I learned what the word transgender meant, and that transition was a possibility for me. This knowledge allowed me the freedom to obtain a job in the financial industry, and I was able to rent an apartment, all of which was a direct result of gender identity being added as a protected class under the Iowa Civil Rights Act in 2007. I was finally able to medically transition to the woman who sits here in front of you today. And yes, I say woman, not because I'm delusional and think that I now have XX chromosomes. I say woman because I live my life as a woman, just as any other woman does. And no, that doesn't mean I just put on a dress and put on makeup now. I'm a daughter, I'm a granddaughter, a sister, and an aunt. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I wake up every day and I go to work. I pay federal and state income taxes. I own my own home in Beaverdale where I pay property taxes. I'm here today because the lawmakers in the state are attempting to create loopholes which would prevent people like me from living their lives with basic human rights. What the media and the lawmakers would have you believe is that I'm a preconceived stereotype rather than a human being. I am not a stereotype. I am not a sex predator trying to gain access to women and girls in public restrooms. And most importantly, I'm not disabled. What would have rendered me disabled is if I wasn't able to obtain and keep gainful employment because of my gender identity. What would have rendered me disabled is if I wasn't able to obtain rental housing prior to me being able to purchase my own home. Representative Jeff Shipley.
You're out of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, to keep things even, I think we have 2 slots for people in favor of the bill. Are there 2 people who have not spoken in favor of it previously who would like to be heard? Okay, I believe the person in the gray sweater is next. Well, yes, because we have no pro speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Munsterman. I am the Executive Director of the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. I speak to you across the board as the Director of the Civil Rights Commission, have been in that position with them for about 12 years now. I also serve as an adjunct professor at a local university in business school. I teach Masters of Business Administration students. I'm also the mama bear of a 17-year-old non-binary child who turns 18 tomorrow. We are strongly in opposition to this bill. This bill not only violates fundamental Iowa code, violates civil rights, it has demonstrable harm to people who are in our community. We are voting against their existence. I have children and young adults coming to me saying, why do you hate me just for existing? They're afraid to speak to their counterparts. They're afraid to even talk to their parents because they're seeing so much hatred across the space. Speaking on the business aspect, the gentleman spoke of this earlier, but we do know that this is going to be an impact when it comes to employable folks. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation concludes that LGBT inclusive policies have higher employee retention and earn more revenue. If we can't look at the morality of accepting and understanding and loving people, let's look at the ROI. We also know that 91% of Fortune 500 companies include gender identity in their non-discrimination policies, as well as 87% include sexual orientation. We also know that this will be a significant harm on mental health. Students are more likely to be suicidal ideation when they're transgender. They are more likely to have anxiety, depression, and PTSD. We also know that they have less access to mental health care as well as physical health care. Some other folks mentioned that before. Businesses across the state of Iowa have communicated consistently over the last several years that laws that are removing these protections are making it more challenging for them to find employees, making it more challenging to have competitive advantages, more challenging for economic and local environments and competitive advantages for those. I am a big advocate when it comes to economic development, as long as it's equitable. And what this bill is doing is removing rights. Thank you.
I'm afraid your time is up. Thank you for your comments. The next speaker will be, unless there's a pro speaker in the room, okay, will be the person in glasses with, I believe, a purple shirt.
Thank you. My name is Annie Sarcone, and I am the director of the Des Moines Queer Youth Resource Center here, and I am a proud trans Iowan. And I'm very proud of all the trans Iowans in this room that have spoke or that are here in the hall in support. I am disappointed by the proposal of this bill, and I'm asking you to vote no. As someone who works with trans youth in Des Moines and enjoys giving back to my community, it makes my heart heavy knowing myself and other trans folks' lives are not seen as equal to others. We deserve protection, and we deserve a state that is invested in our existence. Gender dysphoria and being trans isn't a disability. I am not disabled. Shifting gender identity to a different code will actually make it harder to ensure protection. And quite frankly, it's disrespectful to people who have a disability, who need that protection. Shame on the Iowa legislature for trying to pull something like this, for being the only state to take things this far. Iowans will suffer because of this. The fact we are sitting here debating this is already causing so much suffering, not just for trans Iowans, for their family members, for their friends, for the community members that support us. So I encourage all of you to open your eyes and see the negative impact this will have, and to know that the trans community is a beautiful community, and we are full of people who have so much to offer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a pro draft proposal bill who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, who is the next person coming around the bend there? Yes, please go ahead. Has that person been at the table consistently? I just want to make sure.
What? Yes, hi.
Oh, okay, you've been waiting.
We all have.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just want to take people in order.
Okay. My name is Assanjal Marigan. I live in West Des Moines, and I'm a homeowner, and I'm also a parent to a trans child. I vehemently oppose this bill as a trans non-binary person and as a mother to a child who is growing up in a world that is being taught by Iowa legislators that their world is full of hatred, bigotry, and discrimination in the future. I urge you to vote no against this bill. It makes absolutely no sense and will actually bog down the system that you are trying to free. It paints a world of tragedy and sorrow and anguish that you are creating by sitting here and potentially advancing this bill. It strips away existence of humans as you hear people crying outside, trans rights or human rights. This is an abomination that you are moving forward, and it is political posturing alone based off of fear, hatred, and ignorance. If you spent any of those in favor, spent any amount of time with any of us in the trans community, we are loving, devoted people that care and that are invested in the future of the state and of our world and our country. And if you can look at any of us and tell us that we have less rights than anyone else, then that is the most hideous, vile, and offensive thing I can possibly imagine. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll move one toward the speaker. No, coming this way. The person with glasses, yeah.
Hello, my name is Elliot Sutton, and I am opposed to this bill. I am a non-binary student. I go to high school in Iowa, and I am terrified by the possible consequences of this bill in my life. The bill wants to put gender dysphoria under disability in the Iowa Civil Rights Act, but not all trans people experience gender dysphoria. I am a trans person who doesn't experience gender dysphoria. Under this new classification under the Iowa Civil Rights Act, I would not be afforded the rights and protections that I am now, because instead of my gender identity being a protected class, instead I would need to go and get a diagnosis for gender dysphoria that I do not have. I could be denied housing, loans, the right to shop and buy basic necessities that I need to live. If this bill passes, I probably am not going to stay in Iowa, because I don't want to live in a state that passes legislature that makes my life near impossible to live safely in our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please, no outburst. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Amy Wickendahl. I'm from Hiawatha, Iowa, member of the Hiawatha City Council. I am also a trans woman. I have to ask, haven't you taken enough? Or do you need to sacrifice another pound of flesh on the altar of the culture war? So let's recap here, because you've denied us healthcare, you've banned our books, and you've harassed and forcibly outed queer kids. If this leadership in this body had any dignity whatsoever, it would immediately adjourn this subcommittee and issue an apology for ever entertaining such an egregious violation of human rights. This bill would make Iowa the first state in the history of the United States to repeal civil rights protections for its citizens. You seem to think that being trans is some kind of ideology, so I will say it plain. There is no such thing as transgenderism. There is only transgender people. We are human beings. We are American citizens. We are Iowans, and we do not deserve this abuse that we are getting from our government. I don't know if you've bothered to read the words written on our flag in the rotunda, our liberties we prize and our rights we shall maintain. And by entertaining this legislation, this government is spitting on that flag and making a mockery of our most sincerely held values. Because we all know this isn't the end. If you repeal gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Act, you fully intend to take everything else from us. You intend to take our jobs. You intend to take our homes. You intend to take our families. Because I've already read Project 2025, and you fully intend to criminalize our existence. You want to shove us back into the closet or force us to the nearest border and make our lives impossible. You hope that we'll end our lives by our own hands, and it's clear from the lies and slanders that members of this legislature traffic in, you would be happy to wash your hands if somebody else does it. So I will say this simply: reject this abominable bill. Reject it here and now. It is beneath the dignity of this legislature. I encourage you to be more than a rubber stamp in this never-ending contest between states who can decide to want to crap on trans people the most. And if you don't have the courage to do that, you should tender your resignation effective immediately.
Your time is up. Now on to the, are you in favor of the bill? Okay, then on to the gentleman in the cap, please.
You ready? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Stutler. I am a decorated disabled combat veteran, born and raised in the city of American history. I am, without a doubt, the most senior patriot in this room, likely in this building, possibly in this town. Other good people have and will tell their specific stories today, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about rights. On our flag, it says, "Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain." Read our flag, heed our flag. Rights aren't something given to us by mythological critters. They're not presents from Santa or Odin or Tak or Yahweh or leprechauns. Rights are demanded, declared, and defended by people. We, the people. It's been that way since our inception as a nation. We demanded specific rights from the beginning to today. We've declared those rights from our Constitution to our statutes, and we've defended them from the battlefields of the Revolutionary War through abolition and Civil War, suffragists, freedom riders, Stonewall, Black Lives Matter. Countless people have put their very lives on the line to secure the blessings of liberty. Countless of us have been killed or harmed in this noble pursuit. Countless families have been disrupted so that we may maintain our rights. For the better part of a decade in this building, the formerly Grand Old Party has taken to emulate the party in power in Germany back in the 1930s. You've come to take our civil rights. You've pushed for book banning and burning. You've attacked public education. You've injected Christian theofascism into law. You're demanding our school children, only at public schools, mind you, the cult schools are exempt, to engage in jingoistic practices. And today you're trying to dehumanize my family and my friends. You're doing just what the Nazis did. You've become the Iowa Nazi Party. My advice to you today is simply this: read our flag, heed our flag. We risked everything to demand, declare, and defend our rights. You need to ask yourselves, are you willing
Your time
to
is up.
risk
The
same
gentleman in the
to
red
take
tie
our
has been
rights?
waiting.
Thank you.
Please proceed. The gentleman in the red tie.
Not a fan of Nazis. So.
Gentleman in the red tie, please. Yes. And you will be the last witness to testify.
Okay, great. Hi, good afternoon. I'm here today as an Iowa physician specializing in psychiatry. I'm Dr. David Drake. I'm also a former chair of the Des Moines Human Rights Commission. It was during my tenure on the commission that one of our board members, Michael Bowser, who was gay, let us know that we did not have gender on our list of protected classes for the Des Moines Human Rights Commission. This was a good while ago. We recommended to our Des Moines City Council, and they added gender identity, including trans, to protected classes under Des Moines Human Rights. I'm a graduate of our local medical school, Des Moines University. I've lived in Iowa with my wife, Claire, for the last 29 years. I'm here to proclaim that removing gender identity from protected classes under Iowa Civil Rights Act should never have come even this far for a discussion. This hearing and discussion is a diversion from the real issues in our state and can be seen only as politics, as extreme right-wing forces have a temporary hold on our state and nation. Having worked and known people who are trans and their families, I know this is real and always has been. No one would choose to be trans or having to deal with gender identity. People become aware that the gender of their birth does not match who they are, can face higher rates of suicide and depression while they undergo the challenging changes they face, both personally, with their families, in some cases, in the workplace, and society in general. The diagnosis of gender dysphoria may fit some folks for beginning to transition, but later on as they move forward, hopefully with support of friends and family and in the workplace, they become clearer about who they are. Let's not delete any category of protected classes of persons from the Iowa Civil Rights Act. Let's instead focus on the real issues in our state: clean water, healthcare for all, greater access to support for mental illness, the environment, affordable housing, affordable child care, and women's rights. I'm grateful to talk further to anyone at this hearing further. Encourage each of us at this hearing to meet with and learn to know persons who are trans and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone. Oh, turn your microphone on. One more.
She was here.
Okay, one last person. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Sister Nancy Miller. Thank you for this time. I'm Sister Nancy Miller, a sister of St. Francis of Dubuque, Iowa, and I work for the Sisters of St. Francis of Dubuque, Iowa, and for the Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. On their behalf, I make this statement, which was made back in March 31st of this year, in favor of supporting Transgender Day of Visibility. Also, I speak on behalf of the Challenging Racism Committee of the Sisters of St. Francis. So this is congregation representatives from 4 religious congregations: Sisters of Charity, the Sisters of Presentation, Sisters of St. Francis of Dubuque, and the Sitsinau Dominican Leadership Council call for support of trans youth and all trans people. As we know, the American Civil Liberties reports transgender people face discrimination obtaining accurate identification documents such as driver's license and passports. Only 1 in 5 trans people report refusing being refused medical care for the need, the needs that they have. And also 78 of trans people experience harassment in grades K through 12. So we call on lawmakers not to pass laws that make this more oppressive, but provide for legal protections for trans youth and to reduce harassment and bullying in schools. No one deserves bullying in schools, at the doctor's office, or at home. The safety and rights of all LGBTQ people and all people need to be protected, and their contributions to society deserve to be recognized. Our faith traditions and charisms call us to educate others about the God who created each of us and loves us, and that we are called to love and respect one another, despite our religious beliefs, our identity, and that we are called to care for one another. And we know learning respect for people is especially needed in our globalized world. Being trans is not a defect. All children and people deserve dignity.
I'm sorry, we have to cut
Thank
you
you,
off there.
and we
Thank you.
clearly oppose this bill, and
Thank
please
you.
withdraw it. Thank you.
Okay. So our custom here is to go to comments. Representative Sheets.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it brief because I know we have to get to our next committee at 1 o'clock. I first want to say just thank you. Thank you to everybody that testified here today. I see people that have traveled that I know from across the state to come and share your experiences and talk about why this piece of legislation, if it passed, would be so harmful to the people of Iowa. I'm going to quickly just talk the first thing about human rights. This is pretty simple, folks. We as legislators should not be taking away civil rights for people in our state, especially from some of the most marginalized communities that we have. As a young Iowan, somebody who's in my 20s, the other part of this that's really prescient to me is that we have a workforce shortage in this state. And if we want to convince young people like me to stay here, to build generations, to raise families in this state, we have to be welcoming. And taking fundamental civil rights away from Iowans is not the way to show people in the United States that we are a welcoming state and that we care about every single person in our state. I'll be opposing this bill, and I'd respectfully ask the other members of my subcommittee to be opposing it as well.
Thank you, Representative Sheets. Representative Wills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here and presenting today. So I have a lot of problems with the Civil Rights Code in general. I think that our founding fathers said it best in the Declaration of Independence when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that they said all men. Today we'd write it, all people are created equal. And I firmly 100% believe that. That is the way we should govern. That is the way we should look at things. All people are created equal. The way I look at the Civil Rights Code right now, it is actually gives extra rights to people. With that said, I don't think that this bill is the right way to move this forward. I don't think the way the bill is written is the right process. It actually gives extra rights in addition because of the disability status. And so I will not be moving this bill forward. Will not be signing on to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wills. I'm also a no vote on this. I am concerned about the bill's drafting and what I perceive to be a problem that it would create with creating essentially at least 3 new classes and a tension that it would continue between Iowa statutes and Iowa civil rights analysis and those on the federal level. I'm also concerned that passing this bill in its present form itself under the Romer decision might be a civil rights violation or an equal protection violation. Clearly, there remains conflict among protected classes whose rights are intersecting. And Representative Shipley presented evidence that there are a lot of unresolved issues that need to be addressed somehow, whether that's in this forum or in the courts. We have to take a look at this, but I don't think this bill is the appropriate vehicle for doing it. So I'm a no vote, and I think that concludes the hearing. I'd just like to note, thank you to everyone who was here. My apologies that we don't have a larger room, that we can't let everybody testify, I did try to read all of the email I received, but I can't possibly respond to it all. And thank you for participating in the democratic process and being part of the General Assembly's system. So that concludes this. We'll need to vacate the room very quickly for the next hearing.